Manhattan Street at dusk carried its usual noise, until a mocking laugh cut through, followed by a woman's voice, tight with fear. 3 young men had cornered her on the sidewalk, blocking her path, throwing words that made her shoulders pull in. Most pedestrians lowered their heads and walked faster, but at the far end of the block, one man stopped. He was a single father who understood how much silence could hurt. Seconds later, the entire street went quiet. What happened? Nathan Cole had been walking home from the hardware store when he heard it. The laugh came first, sharp and theatrical, the kind that demanded attention. He was 43 years old and had learned to recognize certain sounds. This one carried an edge that made him slow his pace without thinking. The street was busy enough. People moved past him with the practiced indifference of city dwellers at dusk, eyes forward, earbuds in, already thinking about dinner or the next train. Nathan carried a small bag with light bulbs and cabinet hinges. His daughter needed better lighting in her room for homework. She was 12 now and stayed with him on weekdays. The simple tasks of keeping their apartment functional filled most of his evenings. He had been a father for 12 years and a single one for almost 4. His wife had died in a car accident caused by a driver who had been texting. The police report listed it as vehicular manslaughter. Nathan listed it as something that should never have happened. Since then, he had become someone who noticed when things went wrong around him. He could not walk past indifference anymore. The second laugh was louder, followed by a voice that carried false friendliness over something uglier. Nathan stopped completely now, standing near a mailbox, while others flowed around him. He turned his head slightly and saw them 50 feet away. 3 young men, probably early 20s, formed a loose semicircle around a woman on the sidewalk. She had been trying to walk past them. They had stepped into her path. The woman wore business clothes, a gray blazer and dark pants, and carried a leather bag over one shoulder. Her name was Rachel Moore, though Nathan did not know that yet. She worked as a paralegal at a firm 6 blocks away and had stayed late finishing a brief. She was 31 years old and had made this walk home hundreds of times without incident. Tonight was different. Tonight, 3 strangers had decided she was their entertainment. The one in front spoke again, his voice carrying that forced, casual tone that barely disguised the threat underneath. He was tall and wore a black jacket with the hood pulled up despite the mild weather. His name was Dylan, and he considered himself someone who did not back down from anything. The 2 others flanked him. Eric stood to the left, shorter and stockier, wearing a faded band shirt. Luke was on the right, thin and twitchy, with nervous energy that showed in how he kept shifting his weight. Dylan stepped closer to Rachel, closing the space she had tried to create. His words came out smooth and mocking. "Where are you going so fast? We just want to talk." Rachel's voice came back strained, trying to sound firm, but betraying the fear underneath. "I need to get past. Excuse me." She tried to step around them. Luke moved to block her. It was coordinated enough to show they had done this before, or something like it. The casual cruelty of bored young men who had discovered that intimidation gave them a feeling of power. Dylan grinned, looking at his friends like they were in on a joke. "She needs to get past. Did you hear that? She's busy." Eric laughed, the sound forced and performative. "Too busy for us? That's cold." Rachel's shoulders pulled inward, her body language shifting from assertive to protective. She looked around for help. Pedestrians walked past. Some glanced over. None stopped. This was Manhattan. People had learned not to see too much. Nathan watched all of this happen in the span of maybe 20 seconds. His hand tightened around the plastic bag he carried. He had a choice to make, the same choice everyone else walking past had already made. Keep moving. Get home. Do not get involved. He had a daughter waiting for him. He had dinner to make, and bills to review, and a normal evening to get through. But he also remembered what silence looked like. He remembered standing at a hospital, hearing that his wife had not survived, knowing that someone's carelessness had erased her from the world. He remembered the months after, when neighbors and co-workers had looked at him with sympathy, but had not known what to say, so they said nothing. Silence had a weight. It pressed down. It told you that what happened to you did not matter enough for anyone to act. Rachel was trying to speak again, her voice higher now, genuine fear breaking through. "Please, just let me go." Dylan's grin widened. He was enjoying this. "Let you go? We're not holding you. You can leave any time." He spread his arms mockingly, still blocking her path. Eric and Luke closed in slightly, tightening the circle. Nathan made his decision. It was not heroic or calculated. It was simply that he could not walk away from this and still recognize himself when he got home. He set the bag down carefully beside the mailbox. Someone would probably take it, but that did not matter right now. He turned and started walking toward them. His footsteps were steady, not rushed. He was not a large man, just average height with a build that showed he stayed active, but was not trying to intimidate anyone. He wore jeans and a dark blue jacket over a plain shirt. Nothing about his appearance suggested he was someone to worry about. He was just a man in his 40s walking down a city street. But something in how he moved made Dylan notice. The young man's head turned slightly, tracking Nathan's approach. For a moment, the grin stayed in place, but his eyes narrowed. Eric and Luke noticed too, their attention shifting from Rachel to this new variable. Nathan closed the distance between them, his face calm. He did not look angry. He looked like someone who had already decided what he was going to do and was simply following through. When he was 10 feet away, Dylan straightened up slightly, the mocking tone shifting to something more defensive. Dylan's voice carried a challenge now. "You got a problem?" Nathan stopped a few feet from them, positioning himself so he was slightly between Rachel and the three young men. He spoke quietly, his voice level and clear. "Yeah, let her go." The simplicity of it caught Dylan off guard for a second. There was no aggression in Nathan's tone, no posturing, just a statement of fact. Dylan recovered quickly, his grin returning but harder now, more aggressive. "This is none of your business, old man." Nathan did not react to the insult. He had been called worse. His eyes moved briefly to Rachel, who stood frozen, her face pale. Then he looked back at Dylan. "It is now." Eric stepped forward, his chest puffed out. "You think you're some kind of hero? There's 3 of us." Nathan's expression did not change. "I can count." Luke laughed nervously, trying to break the tension with bravado. "Man's got jokes. You want to get hurt for someone you don't even know?" Nathan finally showed something, a small tightening around his eyes that suggested he was calculating risks and had already accepted them. He spoke again, still quiet, still steady. "Walk away, all 3 of you, right now." Dylan took a step closer, trying to regain control of the situation. His voice rose slightly, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "Or what? You going to fight all 3 of us?" Nathan did not answer immediately. He shifted his weight slightly, and something in that small movement made Dylan's confidence flicker. It was the way someone moved when they knew exactly what they were capable of. Nathan had not been in the military, but he had taken years of martial arts classes after his wife died, needing something physical to channel his grief into. He was not looking for a fight, but if one came, he would not lose. The moment stretched out. People on the street had started to slow down, noticing the confrontation. A few had stopped completely, Phones out, but not calling anyone yet. Just watching. Rachel stood completely still, her breathing shallow. Nathan spoke one more time, his voice carrying a weight that made Dylan actually take a half step back despite himself. Last chance. Dylan's face flushed. He had been challenged in front of his friends, in front of witnesses, and his pride would not let him back down. His hands clenched into fists. Eric and Luke tensed beside him, ready to follow his lead. The street seemed to hold its breath. Traffic noise faded into background static. The only sounds were their breathing and the distant wail of a siren blocks away. Nathan stood ready, his body relaxed but prepared. He had made his choice. Whatever came next, he would see it through. Dylan's laugh came out sharp and bitter. He turned to Eric and Luke, shaking his head like he could not believe what he was seeing. This guy thinks he's going to do something. Look at him. Eric grinned, feeding off Dylan's energy. His voice carried that false bravado that came from being part of a group. Probably watches too many movies. Thinks he's going to save the day. Luke shifted on his feet, his nervous energy translating into aggression now. Man's like 40-something, acting tough. This is going to be embarrassing for you, old-timer. Nathan said nothing. He had learned years ago that talking during confrontation was usually a mistake. Words gave people time to work themselves up, to convince themselves they were braver than they were. Silence was often more effective. He stood with his weight balanced, hands loose at his sides, watching all three of them with the kind of attention that made Dylan uncomfortable, even if he would not admit it. Rachel had moved slightly to the side during the exchange, trying to create distance between herself and everyone involved. Her breathing was quick and shallow. She looked at Nathan with something between hope and terror, clearly wanting him to help, but afraid of what might happen to him. Her hands clutched her bag tightly against her body. Dylan took another step forward, closing the gap between himself and Nathan to maybe 4 feet. Close enough to be threatening, far enough to still have reaction time if things went wrong. His voice dropped lower, trying to sound dangerous. You really want to do this? Over some random woman you don't even know? Nathan's response came quiet and matter-of-fact. I know enough. The simplicity of it threw Dylan off again. He had expected anger or righteousness, something he could push back against. Instead, Nathan just stood there like this was a decision he had already made and was now simply seeing through. Dylan's jaw tightened. He glanced at his friends, needing their support to keep his confidence up. Eric moved closer on Nathan's left, trying to create a triangle that would force Nathan to divide his attention. You're making a really stupid choice here. We were just talking to her, having a conversation. Nathan's eyes flicked to Eric, then back to Dylan, tracking both of them. His voice stayed level. No, you were scaring her. That's done now. Luke let out an exaggerated laugh, but it sounded forced. Oh, it's done? You're telling us what's done? He looked at the small crowd that had formed, playing to them. Everybody see this? Old man here thinks he runs the street. A few people in the crowd had their phones out now, recording. Nathan noticed, but did not care. This was not about looking good or being right. It was about making sure Rachel could walk away safely. Everything else was secondary. Dylan's face flushed darker. Being called out in public, in front of witnesses with cameras, was not how this was supposed to go. He had thought the woman would be an easy target, maybe cry a little, give them some entertainment for a few minutes. Now this stranger had turned it into something that made him look weak if he backed down. His pride would not allow that. The young man's voice rose, anger bleeding through the false confidence. You think you're some kind of hero? You think anyone here actually cares what happens to you? Nathan finally showed something, the smallest tightening at the corners of his mouth. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made several people in the crowd lean in to hear. I think you're about to find out what happens when you pick the wrong person to push around. The air on the street changed. It was subtle, but real. People stopped pretending they were not watching. The ambient noise of the city seemed to dial down a notch. Even the traffic felt quieter. This was no longer just street harassment that people could ignore. This was something building toward violence, and everyone could feel it. Dylan's hands clenched into fists. Eric cracked his knuckles. Luke bounced slightly on his toes, that nervous energy looking for an outlet. They were working themselves up, convincing themselves they could take this middle-aged man who had the audacity to challenge them. 3 against 1. Easy odds. Rachel's voice came out small and frightened, directed at Nathan. "Please, I can just go. It's okay." Nathan did not turn to look at her, keeping his eyes on the 3 men. "It's not okay. Not until they leave." Dylan laughed, but it sounded ugly now. "She wants to go. You heard her. But you're making this into something it doesn't need to be. So whatever happens next, that's on you."